for joining us on this August 4th, 2026 evening, Tuesday. We're grateful for those that are in attendance, all from around the world, as well as physically here. Um, for those that haven't seen the new Digital World website, there is a Digital World Town Hall and Council meeting link, and you can actually join by adding it to your calendar, whether it's a Google Calendar, Microsoft, Apple, or you can download it for other third-party calendar systems. So that is live at digitalworld.earth. And we're focused on a Digital World Town Hall meeting. We're grateful for those that are in attendance online, as well as those that will actually watch this in the future. We will open up with a quick prayer. If someone would like to offer it, then we will review advancements over the last week, and then any kind of questions, concerns, comments, direction, feedback, and then we will convene for a week. So thank you for being here. Is there anybody that wants to offer a word of prayer in whatever tongue or culture or belief that you may have? We'll allow just a couple seconds for folks to unmute if they would like to. If not, we will move on. But I think it's important for us to recognize that there's something bigger than us as far as the physical world that we get to live in. And as this digital world continues to mature, it may do so with a responsible, aligned spiritual principle that we all are connected to, whether we realize it or not. So, but anybody want to get us opened with a prayer? Or if not, we can just get started. I don't want to push that in any kind of way. So. Okay, we'll just get started. Appreciate those co-hosts that are here with us. And this is a reminder that it is a private membership association within the digital world, and some of the things that we may discuss might be forward-looking. For those that need a little bit understanding of why we're here and what this is about, we believe that there are secret combinations that are controlling humanity within different realms or walks of life. It may be insurance, it may be healthcare, it may be big tech, it may be big pharma, it may be shipping or oil or different industries, but we believe that they basically work together to then take over systems, usually through voting or dominion-based systems, and then they basically can control systems, whether it's treasuries or money creation or other elements that then can create or enact laws and then literally just take away choices of others. And so I know it's been a crazy week. Things are very, I would say tensions are high globally, but we can see this. And not only the historical data that we've seen here, but there's private sides of them and public sides of them, and they're growing, whether you're seeing, funds come into systems, and that's actually how inflation and the systems financially work. And that's actually how we'll get through a lot of the craziness that's happening from a debt standpoint as well. Actually, humanity will inflate its way through it, which is a whole nother conversation. But along this path, the individual, the family, communities are basically taken. They're controlled, their voices are taken, the people, the individuals are dealing with things that I believe forefathers, and whether you're talking physically for countries and constitutions and Bill of Rights, etc. But also I believe that we're not here on earth to have our choices taken, and we're given certain gifts. And you can see them in the clouds, you can see them in the stars, you can see them through microscopes, you can see them in gardens, you can see them with animals and how things basically live from a decentralized approach, and many are free. I mean, have you ever thought about how a deer just goes where it wants to go? It doesn't live with the same constraints and controls that we as humans do. But I believe that technology that is intelligently organized, usually in majority of the cases through decentralized principles, where keys and tokens and derived keys, which we'll talk about, are owned by the individual, can actually set them free from centralized systems. Another way to look at it is how math can actually set us free, that is intelligently organized, because that's really what cryptography or these decentralized systems are built off of, which is really just math. So how can your identity be mathematically created? Well, you basically break into different layers around how the identity is actually given to humanity, which I'll walk through with how it actually relates to 12 words, and then how those 12 words turn into a key, and how that key can have derived keys and elements of how it's managed for future generations and as well as our own, but how this can actually turn into a system that can connect the physical worlds and the digital world through this responsible based approach, if you will. So identity and keys are really the basis of it. Then there's multiple layers that basically tie on top of that. Payments ties to them. The goals and focus for 2026 is all around the individual owning their own identity, their own data, and as it relates to storage and artificial intelligence as it's actually standing up. We're actually in the process of working through 25 different patents. I won't go through the details until the deal is consummated, but very important part of this. This is done well before and issued well before a lot of the different artificial intelligent platforms came out, and very important work. So with that being said, I'll jump into some of the advancements this last week. Does anybody have any questions or comments before I move on? If so, feel free to interrupt. There's nothing that you can interrupt. So just if there's something you want to bring up, please do. So the calendar side of it. This is a new website from the digital world. This is live, and folks are welcome to join. Utah Life app for Android, for Clear, as well as for Apple, all have new updates. So there's here, I'll actually go through the websites if you haven't seen them. So this is actually the Apple environment. And this is for a particular use case within the state of Utah as it relates to what we call Utah Life. This is not adopted by the state yet, but it is a system that we're working on to show the state how systems can actually, from a third party, set the individual free based upon what the state of Utah has built, particularly with state-endorsed digital identity, which I believe is a true and correct principle, structure, system. I think it's divinely inspired, and just grateful to be a part of it. There are other jurisdictions. There's the digital jurisdiction that we usually talk about. So this is kind of the Digital Life app. There's a Mexican environment. There is a Hawaiian environment. And there is a Clear environment. Wally, can you touch base on the Hawaiian and Clear, and just so I can get the right URLs for those? That's for Apple. And then this is for Android. So you also see some other ones coming out, but there's recent updates for the apps, primarily because it integrates directly into the actual systems. So whether you're talking about community or communication or genealogy, all of these systems are all now stood up in such a way where the individual can actually manage their own identity and data from a secure standpoint. So we'll jump into one that's an example. By the way, we plan to actually host a lot of what you're seeing here with these multiple different, let's go back real fast. So if you jump into like this one here, I'll log in real fast. So we can actually log into a meeting that's real time. So some of us are actually currently online. And what you can see here is you can see text, you can see polls, you can see screen share, you can see multiple users. And this system basically does the same thing, but in a decentralized approach, where others can deploy the technology. They can also integrate it into an environment that is basically conducive for the individual. So you can have for instance, we use it within this environment here, or multiple different environments. So you can see a physical and a digital ecosystem that's coming together. And what I mean by that is people can basically say, I want to join a certain type of a physical space and be in multiple different locations, similar to what we're showing you here. So these are all different countries. We've got Fiji, we've got Australia, we've got New Zealand, we've got Canada, we've got the US, all represented, but in a digital ecosystem. Well, what are the laws? What are the governance? What are the privacy? How do all these systems work? How do they integrate together? And these apps that I just showed you basically enables environments like this, kind of like what I just showed you here, to basically connect with one another. I know I don't have other people inside of this, but the ability for people to actually log in. I'll go ahead and if you've got a Life app, you can log in. We'll actually move these meetings from this environment over to this system once some of these updates are completed and we start on to the next round of testing. It's not just communications, places, spaces that are physical and digital that are coming together, but you've also got a replacement for what most folks use within the realm of social media. So imagine a standard where you can actually pull in, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's X, whether it's Facebook, you can pull in different identities, if you will. So your contacts, your social platforms, your albums, your photos, your likeness, the ability to actually import these in and then build your own identity here and then share it outside of it. So how can you import in from these other platforms and then be able to share this within other environments? All of that is tightly integrated into the system now, and we're just continuing to build that. This will go along the lines of the Digital Choice Act within the state of Utah, which allows the individuals to say, I want my Facebook data, I want my health data, I want my XYZ data, and I want to import it with a certain standard. This is the type of place where you can actually pull them in. So you can pull in, photos, you can pull in albums, etc. So this is actually continuing to be built up. There's about 38 million users that are actually within this environment. So if there's something you're used to seeing within Facebook, maybe you want to learn about certain things. For instance, I don't know what this, sometimes it's a little meaningless type topic, but here you've got a little dolphin that's giving birth, I guess, I don't know, or grieving. Actually, she passed away. And anyways, I don't want to get us derailed, but you kind of understand, or at least maybe you understand what I'm talking about around where you can actually combine some of the best systems that you've seen with the ability to collaborate. So how you can actually do things from a decentralized approach where most of us, literally humanity, they say that almost a third of humanity has been with Facebook in one form or another, whether it's historical or checking in on a daily event. But so there's a lot to it. There's a lot of integration. There's a lot of value adds, whether we're talking about genealogical systems and a lot of the details that are there. Let's see if I can actually, to reputation systems, to health-based systems. So there's a lot of advancements that will come with these new applications that we've been talking about. I'm going to jump back over here. So
Michael, I just tried to sign in, and it's telling me that to sign into Spaces that it's failed.
are you doing it on a phone or a PC or?
Yeah, I'm doing it on my iPhone. So
that's why these new apps are really important. So particularly the one that I've got up. Why don't you wait until tomorrow, re-download it, and then if you have the same issue, you know how to get support, and just, if you want, we could try and go live with this new system next Tuesday and see if that'll actually come together. And there's a lot of details as we work through it, but I would say let's try and augment next Tuesday. So between now and Tuesday, if the support folks could be sensitive to any kind of request, give it 24 hours and then pull some of these new apps down. And
okay, so should I uninstall my Clear Life app and then reinstall it?
No, you can keep it on. You can actually download this. You're on Apple, so you can actually download Utah Life in addition to your Clear Life on your Apple phone. Just use the same keys, and then everything will be completely integrated. It'll literally transfer right over. Does that make sense?
So I'm not setting up a new phone. I'm just recovering hang on, I don't remember I don't know what the
you're going to restore. Yeah, you're going to restore your profile. You're not going to set up a new one. You're just going to restore it, plug in your keys, and then when you come in, all your assets will be there. It'll be in a different wallet because it's in a different jurisdiction, but you'll be in the Utah environment. So as long as you're aware that your assets with your wallet, it'll look something like this, where you've got multiple different wallets here, and then
Okay.
you can actually move in between them as well or transfer. And there's some really cool things that are happening with the multi-wallet stuff. But this is actually,
Okay.
does that answer your question, by the way, Danielle?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. So this is actually another advancement this last week. Actually, this was started many months ago on the agreements side of things. So within agreements, you have your own agreements, documents, templates, and then right with digital intelligence. So in the digital world, we don't call it artificial intelligence because it's really it's digital in form, but it's controlled by the individual, by the human. And so this is actually a new feature, and it actually uses a form of digital intelligence to actually write agreements. So it knows who you are. If you want to put a third party in, you want to put something in that says, hey, create a bill of sale for a Honda Accord. It knows the jurisdiction, it knows the rights, it knows the different clauses that need to be included in it. Whether it's a simple, so it's literally created it, and then you can actually either open it or save it. So notice that it understands the different parties, the descriptions. So it knows that we're missing a license plate number or a VIN number. This is actually a purported vehicle transfer, which this last week we did the first one all the way through within the digital world using this same system. So same docs, same structure, everything. And then we linked it into the payment system, and then we linked it into the title system, which was actually it was a beautiful thing. But I'm going to go ahead and go into editor so it knows, hey, I need a plate number. So let's go ahead and enter in. If I actually enter in a real plate number, which is cool, it'll actually go ahead and actually tie it. I'm not gonna pop one in, but payment method, it can actually know if I come down, usually when you check out. So here, if I were to actually scan, it says that there's a couple of more variables, but if I were to actually scan, it would then look at my wallet and know, hey, which wallet do you want to work from? And then if you pop a certain wallet into it, it would automatically, and I don't know if I should have selected that one. I probably should have selected a different one. Let's do this a different way. Thanks for giving me a second. It just did an update. So I'm going to put my fingerprint on here. This is 5-factor authentication, something I have, something I do in a certain space and time, separate from the cryptography and the actual physical location. So you can see I've actually signed this, and then you can basically add another party, whether it's through email or in person or through a link, whether it's through text, you name it. You can literally pull in other people on this. Now, we showed you pieces of this yesterday, but what's new, or I should say last week, but what's new within this environment is the ability to actually put artificial intelligence in the middle of it with the constructs of the digital world as the basis for it. Does this make sense? Thoughts, feedback, concerns, anything? Well, it's okay. If not, so in this particular case, this was actually a purchase of a vehicle. And then what if you want to actually link these vehicles into a particular realm to then provide services? And the first service structure will actually be within the Utah environment, and it'll pull in multiple different taxi type services, whether they're robo taxis here in the near future, whether they're drone taxis. But ultimately, people are going to want to understand, how can I get from point A to point B in the most effective way possible, whether I'm using public transit. And in Utah, they've done a really good job of whether it's tracks or whether it's even, there's this High Valley Transit, which is actually free. You just have to wait, and it's a service within a couple different counties, Summit County, Wasatch County, but very, very valuable service. The issue is if you don't worry about time, or if you want to have something fast, this will give you your variables on how you can actually move around from point A to point B. So we just talked about an agreement. The agreement also ties into insurance as well as payouts. I wonder if there's an area here that shows you. None of this does. It's really cool. Maybe there's a subpage that shows you. Well, this is a good example. So imagine that you took a trip from location A to location B, and you can see how much the full trip was. So this was basically $49.07. This was equivalent in DUSD. And then the driver would actually keep a majority of that, which is very uncommon within the rideshare ecosystem. Lyft and Uber take a massive amount. And in my opinion, they just get in the middle of transactions. They actually don't add a lot of value. Most of the insurance companies these days will actually offer rideshare insurance integrated, which was one of the values that they had before. One of the other values was intelligently organizing it within jurisdictions. The digital world creates that jurisdiction and how people actually want to connect, how they want to share identity, how they want to share payments. This is just an example of a service within the digital world. I'm going to go ahead and pull up just digitalworld.earth, and I'm going to go through the layers because they're so important for us to understand and not forget. So governance, and this is how can actually transactions maybe in a digital realm be done, as well as how can they be done within a physical realm with force of law within a particular location. The connection between these two are very, very important. Then the identity layer, then the finance layer, and the agreement layer. We just went through really all of those, and I just showed you some new elements to the agreement layer where AI can create the agreements. But what happens if someone wants to just say, hey, I want to go ahead and transact from location A to location B, and I want to connect directly with the driver, and I want to conform with XYZ type of laws. People can come together and create those and intelligently organize those within environments like the digital world, where it's really a community of people that come together. They agree to basically contract with one another, whether it's private member to private member, but it literally creates a governance layer that is very important, that is not realized within the dispensation that we live in. So that agreement layer is super important. The storage layer, whole nother level of complexity and conversation. We'll talk about a lot of that over the next, once we get the new identity. So we're going from what's called Carry. It's a key receipt architecture that we've been built on from day one. We're going from prior even to pre-version 1 of Carry, which is about 6 years ago. We're moving to version 2, and they're locking down what's called the Carry version 2 standard. And we're actually going to deploy that and integrate that with the existing systems, and then deploy an element of it, which is called AC/DC, which will actually tie to the ability to do key rotation. And then we'll adopt that within the digital world. So after that layer is completed, we'll also tell you about some updates within the storage layer, which is huge. I kind of just started showing you about the communication layer. I do want you to know that we have scoped out for the second time what's called Clear One, which does not only replacement of Zoom and other things, but it'll actually replace productivity apps, calendar, contact, messages, email, docs, sheets, everything that you would rely on Google Docs for. I shouldn't say everything with a blanket term, but the majority of things that you rely on the centralized system with Google Docs will be replacing within this digital world with decentralized systems, similar to what we just showed you on the social layer and on the communications layer. It's important to note that a lot of people are like, how can you just take on these big tasks and actually think that you're going to get them done? You either must be very arrogant or very, on drugs or something. It's just, how do you think you can take on these? And what I would say is, even around Google Docs, like Google Docs, they've done a ton. And if you ask me, I believe that it's actually a different word now. It's like Google Workspace or something. We'll go into here. So when you really kind of understand how all this stuff came about, by the way, I was at Google a board of directors. His name was Mike Leventhal, for a company that I started prior to this with Wally and others, named Direct Point. We were basically in the business of managing what Google Docs does for companies on site. So we would deploy Exchange servers. This was even before Hosted Exchange came out. And we had customers in all 50 states and 29 countries that we would manage these centralized mail systems for. And then their clients, and then their PCs and their printers and all their file print and messaging services. And then in walks in about 2004, 2005, Google comes and basically wants to get into that space. Why? Because they want the data. They want what people are putting into Word docs. They want what people are putting into emails. Why? Because they want to ingest it and use their search capabilities on top of it. Fast forward, what does that feel like and sound like today? It's AI. And I think it's really important for people to understand that Google and Apple, in my opinion, will end up coming together with AI on Gemini to actually replace the current version of Siri. And when that happens, you will have both Apple and Google, which are the largest phone ecosystems globally, working off of a Gemini type artificial intelligence framework, which has to have an alternative that is decentralized, where people can be private. And that is what we will be working on after we wrap up some of the current tasks that we're currently on. So we will be directly competing with what you're doing with Google, whether it's meetings, whether it's docs, whether it's calendars, all of it. And for those that are not aware, on the Clear phones, like this is, I don't know, Wally, how old are these? Like we got into the business, I don't know, 6 years ago. It actually took us about 5 years to launch our first version of phones, but these are all the Google systems. So those docs that I was just showing you, I hope our online audience can see it, but these docs have apps, whether it's presentations, slides, mail, Drive, but they also have an alternative to them with the Clear systems. These are the alternative on a device. We had to actually build a phone, like literally build a phone. And I won't go through all of the other crazy stuff, but well, we actually went to the Attorney General of Utah and said, what is happening between how Google is locking folks into these types of environments and not allowing out is wrong. And make a long story short, there was some legal proceedings that went through. There was a $700 million claim against Google for it. And in the end, you still have to build products that people want to work with. They have to be very usable. They have to be very clean. They have to be very secure. And they've got to be massively affordable. When you combine all those features and functions and give it to the world, which is really can be done on open source technology and open standards, but it's got to be done in such a way where the physical and the digital jurisdictions, like we were talking about, this governance structure where these can actually come together in a very important way. And that's why, we talk about these standards and et cetera, but it's super important that a lot of this stuff be realized. So anyways, the digital world is all about these different layers and the different services, like what we're talking about with communications or the social layer. We just went through elements of that. The digital stuff within the agreements. I believe that the digital intelligence stuff will be much more than what we just showed you within these docs. Like what we just showed you in creating this agreement, it will be much, much, much more. For instance, we have over the last month, Becca on this call proposed that the digital world bring up this decentralized chain of responsibility legislation. America doesn't have it. The digital world doesn't have it. So she wrote this, brought it up, and the goal is, how do we as people come together and actually say this feels right or it doesn't? For instance, there's a link in to this UN side of it. How do we make sure that the long-term vision doesn't do what the UN's done, where it may centralize something or control or oppress a different society? So maybe there's a concern, maybe there's feedback, but the key is you can ask the questions, then you can use a voice in how things get responded to. But how can AI or digital intelligence take something like this and say, hi, we need to have it's gone this amount of time since this has been open. These are the questions, these are the concerns, and maybe there's something that pops up, or maybe there's a final point where it says we need to actually take a vote on this. Does this actually go through the process of, I'm going to jump up to the digitalworld.earth, I'm going to click into governance, I'm going to click into declaration, and legislation, and you can kind of see these are different things that are actually already in draft form, or they've actually been able to pass into law, so to speak. So you can see a couple of them have, but the goal is to get everybody involved that wants to be involved and have an equal voice and have an actual say. And so it's not just that, but it's other things, proposal for a program plan with the establishment of something that interfaces with a financial institution, or a content policy within the digital world tied to the social platforms that actually take the Digital Choice Act to another standard. Or for instance, this is actually an update that I need to provide, but the goal is you've got to have a level of intelligence that can actually run a system where people can still be people, especially as you transcend generation to generation. Like, how is something passed from one generation to another generation and still function or work? How does property or land titles actually get passed from one generation to another without probate or issues? How can someone, if they want to travel from point A to point B, how can they actually do it with a direct connection to one another? These types of systems don't have to have humans involved, but we can use intelligence, but the intelligence must be managed by the human. And those are some of the biggest vexing problems that the digital world is willing to say, we're going to go and come up with solutions for this so that future generations don't have to deal with the consequence of it. So those are some of the things. Any comments, questions, thoughts, concerns before we move on?
Why do you think Utah is so on the ball with this?
I think there's a lot of like-minded people that have genealogical roots, which is actually the next topic I was going to jump into. So this is actually an interface which ties to genealogy, and that genealogy ties to the living, and it also connects to the dead. I'll actually jump into a real-world situation here. Let's see if I've got one open already. I'm just going to jump in. So I believe that genealogy is a really important, and this is just a good example of what I just showed you before. But I believe that genealogy is a very important thing. And a lot of folks that actually came to this part of the world, namely Utah, actually have some history where they may have had to fight for freedoms and had to fight for basic rights. And I think a lot of it is built into the culture that's here. I personally have some pioneer and genealogical roots around people that were just, they stood up for what they believed in. And I think a lot of people in Utah have those same types of roots. And even people that don't, from a Utah standpoint, I think that humans in general have a real desire for freedom, for choice. And I think that the state of Utah is literally listening, they're thinking, they're taking a step back. I particularly really, I've grown to respect a gentleman named Chris Bramwell. And on one hand, even a couple days ago, or even just yesterday, it was like, that's not right. What I just heard and experienced, that's emphatically wrong. But then when I try and understand it and think about it from a different perspective, he's really right on just a ton of stuff. And I believe that he's going back to the right things: the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. These documents are actually documents that is building the structure for what's really being passed within the state of Utah. And it's not just state endorsed digital identity with a digital bill of rights and SB 275. It goes way beyond that. And Utah, I believe, is full of a lot of people that care. There's a global approach. There's a real connection to other parts of the world, all nations, all people, all tongues, all cultures. And really, it's not from a monetary standpoint or a greed standpoint. It's really to help others, that we recognize that we're one big family and that we need to work together, if that makes sense. And that's really why I think that Utah is leading that path. I also believe that, and this is going to sound crazy, but the state of Utah is known as the Beehive State. And the country of New Zealand is known as the country, or the Beehive. Their parliament and their office buildings are actually a big hive, but they're the Beehive country, so to speak. And I believe that there'll be a connection between New Zealand and Utah in a very real way. And it'll follow a lot of this state endorsed digital identity, which is actually down here. This is actually a lot of the different policies, the sections that the digital world will follow, and the current systems. And if there's things that is not perfect, we will make it perfect. I mean, the bottom line is we really believe in what the state of Utah is doing. For those of you that have been on this call for years and years and years, you know that we went all through the Pacific. Like literally, we went through different regions and different phases. And we started out we actually went to 28 different countries physically within the Pacific. We're talking about almost half the earth, 40 billion acres, 25,000 islands, 40 million people. And before we worked with Utah, we were looking for places that actually cared about the individual and the freedom. And we found it in a lot of different countries that are actually already decentralized. The Kingdom of Hawaii, a lot of people don't understand that's still existing. Just because the state of Hawaii or the Republic of Hawaii was stood up, there's still people that have real DNA and real lineage and real history and real, what they would call in Aotearoa or New Zealand, they have whakapapa, who they are. And you can't just take that out because you take over some culture. I mean, I look at what's happening right now, and I don't want to talk politics. I don't even want to talk religion, but we're talking about a 5,000-year-old culture in Iran that is being threatened by a 250-year-old country. If you go in and look at Vanuatu here, they're real similar. They're not as old as Iran. They're about 3,000, almost 3,500 years old. But their blood and who they are, especially like we have gentlemen from Fiji on here, their bloodlines are real similar with Fiji, and it's Micronesian, Melanesian type cultures that are different from the Polynesian cultures. So in this Melanesian environment, whether we're talking about, Vanuatu or Fiji, the same bloodlines, I believe they came over, they were a part of King Solomon's type of crew, and they were like, you know what, we want to be free. And we're on a boat and we're just not going to sail where they want us to sail. And lo and behold, you got these amazing Fijian people. They've mixed with some Indian bloodlines, but they are amazing people. Their hearts are solid. The Vanuatu people, you talk about, they're looked at as one of the most free countries and the most happiest countries in the whole world. So we went around the Pacific, whether we're talking about Mexico and even Canada and even some of the movements, whether it's the Greater Oregon movement or even some of the stuff with California. But anything that touched that Pacific, we spent a lot of time with, many years before we bumped into the people in the state of Utah that were like, we're actually going to do this right. We're going to identify an individual, let them live free, decentralized, and the state will endorse them. The state will go through different services, which I'll talk about over the next couple of weeks, which we're working a lot on. And how can we actually fund this? How can we deploy it? But do it in a responsible way where it's actually the state that can guide it and the individuals that can guide it. And the service providers take a back seat to these different systems that can be stood up for the future of systems, transactions, rewards, How do merchants work? How do vendors work? How does payments work? How do rewards work? How does identity work? All these different systems and how it can really be pulled together. So there's a lot more to just the state of Utah, which is really, this is actually one of the apps and one of the sites which will tie to a lot of the different things we just talked about with merchants and payments and rewards and distribution. But I believe that all humanity standing up, not just folks in the Pacific, not just folks in the Rocky Mountains like Utah and Wyoming and Idaho, but humanity actually realizing that, you know what, we were intended to be free, and we've imagined it allowed these imaginary lines to be called borders, and thereby which we allow ourselves to say, hey, you know, I want to go and get married. So I go get a marriage certificate within a state. And that certificate enables certain things that happen from a legal context throughout the rest of your life, unless you get divorced. And then if you have children, it's like, okay, well, I'll be an informant and say, this child with this name on this birth date equals this. Now they get a number. And it's like you enroll them into these ecosystems. And I'm not saying that what's happened historically is wrong. And I'm not talking about taxation. I'm not talking about sovereignty movements. I'm talking about how humans can intelligently organize themselves to actually do something better. I'll give you an example of how there's just massive dysfunction out there. So imagine you actually have a credit card, and that credit card has a number on it, and it has a code. Some people call it a CVS or CVC, etc. But imagine that is just your public number and your private number, which ties to the same types of keys that I've been trying to talk to you about. The way that we do it is crazy. Like even today, I sent off a message to somebody and I said, you see all these transactions? Did you do these? Because I didn't do these. And it's like, then you start digging into it. It's like, we got thousands of dollars in transactions just because, you know, you go and buy some fries and you give somebody a card, they can take a picture of front and back and then push it onto a network. And then people just share the networks. This isn't complicated. Like you're literally giving away your whole ability to transact with what you work hard to put your own money in your own bank. You give it away to humanity, to people you think you trust. And I'm not saying that everybody's dishonest, but what I'm saying is the way that identity is organized and payments are organized is absolutely dysfunctional today. Do I believe that bankers and organizations will come together? Just like there's secret combinations that do negative stuff, there are groups of people that will work together to actually come together in a positive way. And so Utah Life, Utah State endorsed digital identity, I believe that all of this can actually be something that is a beacon for the rest of humanity to adopt. They don't have to pay for it. They don't have to, in many ways, they won't even have to develop it. Like it'll be given to them if they want it. If they want to free their people, their citizens, their nationals, depends on what part of the world. I mean, we're talking to people in Aotearoa, which was a kingdom that was taken over by a certain kingdom. Then we're talking to people from Fiji, which is a kingdom. You know, Samoa, Tonga, Rarotonga, Atutaki. These are all kingdoms with different types of laws. And then they turn into nations like Vanuatu that I was telling you about earlier. They literally just stood up and took their New Hebrides environment back, renamed it. So you're saying the same things that will happen in other countries. New Caledonia, same type of thing. So this isn't far-fetched. Like 200 years ago, identity was actually not issued to someone when they took their first breath or when they were conceived or when they were born or when their parents filled out a document. Like the ability to actually create life is such a gift. We cannot just continue to squander it the same way that we have. And so I believe that a lot of people in Utah believe that same thing. They're standing up for the right things. And that's why we're investing so much time to build out these systems, update the systems, meet people where they are, whether it's with Apple or whether it's with Google or whether it's within a clear environment. So if we go to clearos.apps, come on. Oh boy. I lost my keyboard. Anyways, I think you understand it. Maybe that's not going to work. No. Yeah, my keyboard just died. So, anyhow, you put it in the wrong place. Any questions, thoughts, comments, feedback?
I just have a question about the agreements. Does the authorizing party where you send the request to, do they have to have Clear Life? Like, does it have to come from
They just have
their
to.
wallet or their?
Yeah, they just have to have a Life app. And then
Okay,
they-
so Life app. Okay,
Yeah.
so it can't come from another kind of
no,
authenticating chain.
no. It can come from a. It can come from a chain that uses the same identity systems underneath it, but it must come
Okay,
from. Go ahead.
Because this is legally binding. This
Yeah.
Clear Life, right?
Yeah. So the digital world basically has legally binding terms that when people use the Life app, become a member of the digital world, they're starting to use different types of legally binding terms that are more tied to cryptographic identities. So they have to, to use it, they would basically pull down a Life app. They would actually get their private keys. They would get a public key. They click on the scan button. Like when I did this automobile transaction just a couple days ago, last week, it was literally all of 60 seconds to complete the whole process. Very simple, very clean. We even had the title and the payment stuff all wrapped into the whole transaction. Worked really well. Historically, even if we just back up 15 years ago, the ability to do an Adobe sign or an EchoSign or a DocuSign, those laws were not behind a lot of those systems. They had to create them and say, hey, in America and the UK, this type of digital signature is actually legally binding. And then there was a lot of questioning, is this real? Is it valid? They would go through and actually verify if it's actually real. And then some people would contest it. But I believe that when you link agreements with digital intelligence, and we hope to use a amazing company out of New Zealand called Lumen that basically has done a great job of building awareness and adoption of these agreements. We hope to link a lot of that in with the same systems because they've got hundreds of millions of users that are out there in the world. But the point is it's a cryptographic signature, so you need a cryptographic wallet to be able to do it. But it also records it. It ties the agreement to them. If they want to send it to themselves, if they want to save it, it automates that whole process. And you as a member that create it, it makes it simple for you to use it. So I would encourage you, please feel free, go through the process of actually using these different documents. See if there's something that let's see if I can find it. Maybe it's right here. So see if it's something that makes sense in your world, if you've got feedback on it, and go from there. So does that make sense, Becca?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because I use some systems that are non-binding for certain reasons, and then I think this is great that this is legally binding when you can actually understand the architecture. So
it also has an environment inside of it. So if we were to go and create a new document, let's just create a new one. You'll notice, and I'll just do a simple one here.
I did send you the link, Jenny. I just did a test one.
Did you?
I sent you options to send it to email or text. I sent you the link.
I joined it.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it says
Awesome.
that I'll be getting. Hang on, it says you're now party B. You're now party B on love contract test. Only party A has been notified. Watch for sign link.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you'll notice here, you've got a primary jurisdiction as the digital world. So I don't know if you can see this, but you can also select, the secondary, or you can leave it blank and it'll continue to build it as the digital world. And then you can have a completely digital intelligence governed document. So it says, hey, this party's going to pay this party on this date in this kind of recurring transaction for this asset, and the asset's going to transfer when their payment goes. So you've got total clarity. Like right now, how much, Danielle, do you own of a car or of a lease? And can you lease to own a home? And like, there's going to be some crazy stuff that happens within society in the financial side of the world where there are going to be systems that will reset. And when they stand up, they're going to stand up on cryptographic systems. But you can't ignore that there's a jurisdiction that people live in that has force of law. And that's where a lot of this stuff comes into play. So you can select what's the secondary location that if the primary jurisdiction of the digital world doesn't work for whatever reason, let's say party A just doesn't like it, they want to mediate, mediation doesn't work, they want to go to the physical jurisdiction that actually has force of law where someone can come and take something. Well, you can actually go and build that into the actual agreements and actually continue through a process, which I won't fill this out. But so I think it's making sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Other topics or thoughts or concerns, feedback, positive or negative, any of it?
So Michael, this agreements, is that for anything? Like
Yeah.
it's not just for vehicles, right?
No, it's for anything. Like
For anything.
literally.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can create a custom one from ground up. You can literally
Okay.
type it from the ground up. You can do service agreements, consulting agreements, custom agreements, employment agreements, purchase agreements. You know, you can start from scratch with AI. You know, you can literally, but agreements are usually pretty basic. They usually have a term, so a time frame. They usually have a signing date, so where it starts. They usually have parties, and maybe it's something where it's just a will, and you just want folks or AI to say, I shouldn't say AI, but digital intelligence within the digital world, upon your passing and a death certificate basically being validated, uploaded, and consummated, then your assets in your wallet can actually be disseminated. So let's say that you own property, or you own a home, or you own a vehicle, and maybe a bank account. Maybe it's a fiat bank account. This can literally create an estate planning process that builds all that. And it ties into the asset side of it. So if we come into finance and we look at currencies, equities, commodities, you've got normal bank accounts, you've got, you know, different assets. Maybe this is a boat. Maybe, you know, you've got currencies, equities, commodities, crypto, rewards, bonds, insurance. By the way, we're doing some stuff with insurance right now that's pretty active. So imagine if you can actually say, hey, the value that's here upon my death, I want it to go to these parties in this way, in this time frame, etc. You can literally build it out cryptographically happening without any kind of government, without any kind of probate, without any kind of state. You know how many hundreds of millions of dollars just in the state of Utah every year get lost to the state just because of unclaimed assets? And it's billions in California and New York. It's like, that's just the US. So that stops a lot of this different craziness. And because you've literally wrapped your identity, your normal identity, for instance, these are real world bank accounts, right? You've logged into your normal bank accounts and you've literally taken a decentralized identity and wrapped around it. You can actually free yourself from a standpoint of those centralized systems. And I'm not saying that government is bad, because it's got its place. But the ability for governments to actually stand up and say the individuals are the ones that are actually managing their own identity, their own data, their own assets, and it's all mathematically done, that's pretty disruptive. That's pretty important. So does that
Okay, so Michael,
go ahead.
so let's say I have 10 XRPs that I want to leave to my nephew upon my passing. Can you walk me through exactly how I would do that?
So you would grab your wallet,
Right.
and you would come in here and you would say, I can see I have these different assets, right? So these are all crypto assets that are created.
Right.
But let's say that I actually want, I want some XRP. And let's see if I can actually find specifically XRP in this list. So XRP is actually one that's coming soon. You can see this here. But let's say it's something similar to XRP like Ethereum. So
Okay.
what you would do is you would say, I have Ethereum. I want to take one Ethereum and I want to convert it. So I'm actually going to go ahead and bridge Ethereum to DETH. I'm going to go ahead and scan this. It actually sends it to this wallet right here. Okay. You send your Ethereum and then it automatically pops out the DETH and it's done. So now you actually have DETH. So this was actually be it right here inside your wallet as the time
Okay.
value of the ETH or the XRP, whatever your analysis is,
Yeah.
goes up or
Yeah.
down. So whenever this, this is 1-to-1. So as ETH goes up, DETH goes up. As it goes down, it's completely bridged and paired with it. But it does it in a
Right.
system that can actually send and receive in real time. So for instance, Ethereum takes a fee. The digital world has no fee.
Yeah.
Like you can
Right.
send things back and forth in real time. If you come in and you say, this is actually my personal assets, and it's broken up between lots of assets that are actually currencies or commodities or others, and I actually want to move them. I want to swap them. So let's say this Hawaiian dollar, or let's say this DUSD, I want to convert into that ETH, right? So let's say I
Right.
actually want to convert it. I want to take let's say 0.001. Oops, my keyboard's bad. 0.001. I can't even buy
One
this.
of the USD. Come on, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I could swap it. So I can go like this.
From DUSD, you want a 0.0001 of a DUSD.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Sorry.
I thought you were doing it backwards. Okay.
No,
so
it's still liquidity. Well, can you bring this up around? Let's find a different one that has better liquidity. By the way, if you noticed, when I dropped it onto ETH, I see that it's got red. That's red, so it doesn't have good liquidity. But let's say I want to convert it over to DBTC or to native here. So I'm just going to swap this. Actually, I don't want to do that. I'll just do this amount. Same thing. You can see that. And remember, this is completely decentralized. So you have buyers and sellers that have to be on both sides of the transaction because the system is just the system. There's no market makers. There's no fluff in this. It has to actually be with transactions that are completely redeemable real time. So you can see that those assets were actually received real time. And that only happens when it's inside of a system like this. Like you can't do that with Bitcoin. Full settlement is not 3 seconds like that. It is, in many cases, 10 minutes. You can see a transaction that's starting, especially when you're looking at the Lightning Network. But the point is when you're looking at identity and who someone is, where they come from, what their reputation is, maybe something around health, in which health is going to be a big topic in the future. I won't spend a lot of time on it now, but things we should talk about. We're running out of time today, but jobs.
Okay, but wait, you didn't finish. You
Go
didn't
ahead.
finish. I want to know if I want to will that to my nephew, let's say. How do I do it? Show me from start to finish.
So it would,
because I write up an agreement, or how does that work?
You got it. That's exactly right. So you would take, these are your finances. These are all your assets in your life, whether it's a home that's a physical home that's got a trust deed on it, that's tied to this. By the way, in the state of Utah, we just passed some laws around that. So you can cryptographically actually manage the title, which there's actually title fraud where literally people will take over someone's home to go get financing, take off with the funding, and the next thing you know is you got a second mortgage on it, or you got some different placement.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Oh, I've heard about that.
So let's say that this was just an estate that you have. So you've got rewards, cryptocurrencies, commodities. You could come in and you could start an agreement that actually goes through, and we would say we're going to actually create an agreement that would actually pass it from one generation to the next. So you're going to have multiple scanning. Let's see here. Actually, let me pull
that would be a custom agreement.
Well, there's actually some estate stuff that we're actually doing that's super duper cool.
Okay.
But this is actually a new type of an agreement. So you could write it up and say, I'm actually going to just, oh, I can't actually say it. Wally, could you create a task in the flow system where John basically adds in that people can talk? So you don't have to type it. So let's say I would like to create a will to send all assets to 5 different parties or family members with wallets. Actually, I'll just say in the digital upon my passing. Now, you have to understand, please review all that I have.
Now, would that be recognized?
It doesn't really matter because it's cryptographically going to happen. Does that make sense? Like,
Oh, yes, that makes sense.
it's all
Holy
mad.
moly.
Like, who cares? Who
Oh,
ca-
oh my God, Michael. Wow, I just got it.
Yeah, exactly. Like when
Oh,
you,
wow. So that means that if let's say I want to leave it to my nephew, if my nephew, as long as my nephew has a wallet in the digital world, I can send him everything.
you got it. Like, look at this. You got it. And so you need to define, this is my nephew,
Yes, of course,
etc.
of course.
So you can see what needs to be defined in this. So this is created a last will and testament, a distribution agreement, knows the assets, knows the benefit. You have to identify the beneficiary. So when you come into this section of it, you actually need to identify who the beneficiary is.
And how do I identify with his identity, with his cryptographic identity inside the digital world, or his wallet address?
Yeah, technically you can actually add signers. So let's actually say that you're actually one of these parties, okay?
Yeah.
So let's say you're going to scan in person here with me. So go ahead and grab your Life app.
Yep.
And scan this puppy, and it's going to actually look and try and find which wallet you want it sent to. So depending on the Life app you're going to use. By the way, there is key rotation and key restoration coming that will literally make any of the concerns that people had with managing cryptographic keys a moot point. Like if your keys are compromised, you can literally rotate them. So you still have all your own assets, your own identity. So did it give you a wallet selection?
No, it didn't actually. Hang on, let me do this again.
Well, it might
I
do
scanned
it.
it.
Might do it here.
Accept.
Let's just give it a second.
Yeah, it did take a second the last time.
Did it approve? Did it approve for you? By the way, I can actually see right here. You see this?
It said successful.
Yeah, so it'll actually pop in your actual. And it signs it on the chain. Like we can click on it. We can see in an Explorer that this actually happened. So right now, and I'm not going to refresh. I'm just going to see it because I can see right here that this is actually your address. This is who you are. You're a Digital World member. So think about it. You're private. So it's going to pass it to you upon proof of death. Now, like this is actually a government needs to endorse my death certificate. So it's not just like a willy-nilly thing, like a coroner is, not like Charlie Kirk's type thing. It should do a full autopsy and say they passed away from this on this date, etc. By the way, Wally,
But
could
how would the digital world know that?
I'm sorry?
How would the digital world know that? If I do this agreement and I want to send everything to my nephew to inherit everything, you said he needs a death certificate. How would the digital world know?
The digital world's digital intelligence would only pass it upon death, where a couple things actually happen, and these are the things we're building in. So a certain amount of time, a certain amount of third-party validations and endorsements, like the state of Utah. You have certain things that actually have to transpire. You've got to verify that there's maybe you want to verify there's activity on the other side of it. But it literally, you give the person 30 days or 30 years or whatever, to be able to say, I haven't checked in. Like when you do proof of life, I hope I clicked the right one. When you do proof of life, it's literally verifying who you are when you actually scan everything you scan, whether you're logging into a system. So I believe that this will become a login, that proof of life becomes a part of who you are. And if you stop doing it for a period of time, at the same time, a government has said, this is a death certificate that's endorsed by a state or by a governing body that's recognized, it literally will go all the way through. So
it will go through to the digital world?
Yeah, it'll actually transact. It can actually the transaction can actually consummate and transfer without humans. Does that make sense?
No, what I'm saying is, I don't remember what department it is in Canada, but when somebody passes, it's the funeral home typically takes care of all that. But anyway, it goes to the government, and then the government sends you an official death certificate. But how would that be recognized by the digital world? That
death certificate would actually be tied into this. So it's actually already identified me and all that fun stuff. I've sent this in as a request, Wally. There's no action there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into more. There's actually should be certificates somewhere.
Well, when we did this the last time, my signature went through. I remember.
Wally,
it took some time, but it went through.
Let's see here. There should be, maybe it's up under here. So credentials, my life, my records. There's an actual way to get a death certificate. You'd think I would actually know how to do this. This is the system that you're asking about. It's not actually created yet. Let's see here.
No, I was just wondering how, like right now, today as it stands, if somebody dies and gets the government issues a death certificate, how does it go? How is it recognized by the digital world?
It's actually someone would file something just like this, and they actually have to scan it. So they would get this unique key, which is actually a derived key. So they would actually create a document like this, so it knows who's actually creating it. Okay, so it's actually going to use a derived key, just like what we just saw created right here. Okay, they would fill out all of this information, and they would submit it. The submittal. Go ahead.
They would submit that to the government?
Yeah, this would actually get submitted to kick off a process. And, for instance, a loved one, when my father-in-law died, he had loose ends, and he actually made my wife responsible for it. And he knew that I would do certain things. But what we basically ended up filling out a death certificate, which then creates a chain of events. Right. So it's like, okay, what happens to bank accounts? What happens to taxation? What happens to Social Security? All these different things that basically get triggered. And so you would have a next of kin. In the future, you'll have families that will actually be verified with the genealogical systems that will actually tie to it. So.
But I'm not asking inside the digital world. I'm asking about how do you get from the physical world, how do you get that death certificate into the digital world? How is it recognized by the digital world? Where's the connection? Where's the on-rail from, the Canadian government to my digital world account?
That's the goal of what we're looking to do within the state of Utah, one by one over time. The goal is to actually work with the state, and I'll pull up this utah.country. And again, this is way early stuff, but it's got to start somewhere. And just by us saying it and doing it and pushing on it, people are either going to say, I support that, or I'm totally against that. And because of that, it's going to bring these topics to the surface. So you're spot on. So there has to be a state. And that's why what the first question that was asked by Sean is so important. If a state is willing to say, we would actually endorse someone's death certificate and verify with a coroner that there's been a process that's conducted on them. Maybe they had an autopsy, maybe they haven't, maybe there's, whatever. But Those are physical forms today that are really rudimentary. But imagine where they're actually using laws. So these are just 5 of 7, almost 8 material laws. But imagine that in jurisdictions where you can actually link decentralized identity with a central system that actually endorses it. You know, it's not done yet. It's not done at all. But a lot of counties are the ones that actually run certain types of records. The record to vote. You know, maybe it's a record of marriage or others. But ultimately, the counties are subservient to the state, which really holds the powers that have been decentralized from the federal governments. And most countries that actually, like Mexico's the same way. You know, they've got a Mexican environment that's a federal environment, but then the states have their own autonomy and their own powers. So, you know, is it done yet? No. Is it still early? Yes. Is there still a lot of wishful thinking around this? Absolutely. But
yeah, but it's a great conversation, Michael. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, it's really real. This is actually some tech where it's taking it offline. So if you'll notice the URL, I'm not actually paying attention, but if you look at this URL, it's actually gone offline, and you'll have things around health or genealogy that you wouldn't see in some of the other systems. Like think about it. This is one person with 20,000 ancestors, 28 generations back, right? Like these are real people, right? So who are they connected to? When were they married? So let's even go further back to this one. This is the 1600s, right? How do we dig into these? How do we know? And that's why when we actually realize we are humans having a human experience and we have family members, that's how we got here, whether we know them or not. Like I personally feel like I've got like 5 families, right? Foster families, this family, biological family. I mean, there's just the connection, married into families, and I've got people marrying into my family. I mean, it's just, we're all humans and we're all connected. And when we start figuring this out, it's not just going to be around how you pass assets from one generation to another, but it's going to be around how we actually treated one another, how we lived, what our health was like, how we passed it, you know, how these things actually were connected. And it can happen in such a massive way. Now, think about this. I'm actually looking at someone from the 1600s, but what about looking at someone from this year? And how does that tie to identity fraud, but still give ownership to the actual individual that owns that relationship or genealogy or data, or maybe photos that tie to these people? How do you link photos to them? How do you link movies to them? How do you link assets to them? How do you link health to it? How does health tie in to genealogy? You know, for instance, let's just, like, we're doing some big stuff with horses, but look at this just with a cow, right? So how does this cow that actually is tied to a registry, like, I don't know if you've ever seen these types of belted Galloways, which are Oreo cows, or how did they get like this? How are they so consistent? You know, well, when you really dig into it, it's who they come from. It's how they're connected. And what we used historically was these registration systems. This will be the future of registration systems, if you ask me. Like, literally, how are we all connected? Who do we have stewardship over? How does our genetics work? PGX testing, UGX testing, AGX testing. How does it all come together? How does relationships and witnesses work? How do the memories link into it? So, for instance, you know, how can we take this person with a photo in the 1600s or 1920 and link with 90% accuracy or similarity to them as actually in a photo? There's technology that can do this. The goal is to get it so that we're not actual victims of centralized systems, kind of like what's happening with Flock. Flock is the opposite of everything that I'm telling you. How can people actually own their own data and use intelligence to relate who they are, whether it's health-wise, whether it's DNA-wise, whether it's genealogy-wise? How do we do it in such a way where we actually bring people together instead of centrally controlling it and the few control the data? So right now we're building this based upon sheep and for instance, this is an actual true health record. The sheep actually got caught around a rope. It was cut off. It was losing weight. It's actually getting better, but I don't know if the weight's going up. But all of these things will absolutely be able to be registered. And then you can tie to the registration systems that are all decentralized. So how does a butcher know that they actually want to slaughter this or buy it at a certain time versus maybe waiting a year versus knowing what the supply and demand is within the market for lamb versus, so my point is we can use intelligently organized data for the betterment of humanity based upon stewardships and rights and principles and provenance. Like there's some big things that tie to that as well. So, does this make sense? A lot of sense?
Makes a lot of sense, Michael.
There's also going to be some elements that we haven't even talked about around how can you buy and sell these things? And if the agreements are tied to it and the payments are tied to it, how can you go and say, you know what, I want to buy this animal. I want to discover what's right, verify it, negotiate an agreement, pay, transfer, prove it, resolve it, all cryptographically. Like this can absolutely be done with digital intelligence and people that actually want to buy and sell things. And it doesn't just have to happen with one thing. It can happen with multiple different things. And, it's not just what you want to buy and sell online, but it's actually ties to other things around maybe where you stay. Maybe it's around how you travel there. We've talked a little bit about that. And you can do it again. You can do this in a form that is online and offline, and you can still manage it and connect it. So it's not like we're all basically only connected if we're online. I believe that these systems need to be private. They also need to be. The internet was created based upon really nuclear war, and how do we disseminate knowledge and communication if there was massive war and we actually had to communicate or we had to retain knowledge or and I don't want to just be negative because the president of the United States of America said we're going to actually start something that we haven't seen since the Second World War. But the reality is we have a stewardship to actually do something. We can't just sit by and watch the rich get richer and the poor get poorer and the middle class gets stamped, and even people that just judge these classes, because life is not about classes. We're equal. We're all here. We're all a family, and we just need to allow technology to unite us instead of divide us. And that's hopefully what you've been able to see here today is advancements within these systems, and not just within systems, but hopefully within a culture, within a state. And I really believe in the state of Utah. As much as I've been around the world and I've seen a lot of other crazy things happen within different societies, I'm trying to find, as a matter of fact, when I've talked about different societies, I was talking specifically about the Pacific and others. But this is one thing. This was also recently updated, which is basically there's about 65 different cities or states or provinces that are all being monitored by artificial intelligence to see how they're doing in their own realm. So how it relates to identity or finance or governance. What are they doing? Are they actively deploying it? Is, in this particular region, digital marriage is just emerging. And this is Estonia. But if we look at Utah County, Utah County, they literally led the world in how all those things were basically realized, so to speak. So this will use technology. It'll get better over time, and it'll basically show you, is the culture sovereign or is it free? By the way, Wally, can you take a task to invert these colors? They're illogical, but or just task me with it. So other thoughts or comments before we wrap up? If not, we will ask for anybody that wants to offer a word of prayer as we wrap up in whatever kind of tongue or language or culture. There's no right or wrong. It's just the importance that recognizing that there's more to us as physical individuals here on an amazing earth. But yeah. It's
I can take us out.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
Lord, thank you again for letting us be able to meet today. Have Michael go over all the progress. So thank you for all your help with us also making through the chaos in the world, as we trust that you are working it for something better than was there before. In your son's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us online and for joining us from around the world. We will see you next week. In 2 weeks from now, we'll actually have a trip. If you want to join with us, you're welcome to it. Just look at digitalworld.earth. And we may be offline in 2 weeks, but we'll plan on seeing you next week. So anyways, much love, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.